Yes. So, hi everyone. I'm going to tell you a bit about Play Pilots, which is a project we did a few years ago, and I'm going to zoom in on the notion of engagement and how the things we made in this project each engage people in different ways. So here's, before I introduce kind of a bit about the background of this project, here's what was made. First of all, 3 live games for 3 local cultural festivals, and each was made by one of Utrecht's more adventurous games studios. The first was a live game. So these are all games that don't happen on screens, or they might employ screens, but they're very much about what happens in the physical world, and they're very much about playing together. So this is Wip and Kip by Force Labs for Stekkerfest, an adult-sized spring rider race. Stekkerfest is an electronic music festival. The second project was the Stereoscope by Zesbaans for the Netherlands Film Festival. This was a kind of a VJing installation about 30 years of Dutch film history. And finally, Bandjesland by Monobanda for the Guess Who, another music festival, but in this case, pop music, multiple day pop music festival. And this is kind of a collaborative music making space. And we also produced a website that connected these 3 live games together in various ways, and each of these live games outputted data, if you will, information, records of play to the website. So this is where this project took place. This is Utrecht, the 4th largest city in the Netherlands. It's a university town. It has the largest art school in the country. It's home to the first game design program in the Netherlands. And it's become sort of the heart of the Dutch games industry. I have my office over there as well. And besides being kind of a hotspot for games, for game design and game development, it's also a very vibrant festival town, a lot of interesting cultural events happening throughout the year. This project started, it was commissioned by an entity simply called Play, which is still, which was at the time looking to develop a place for playful culture. Perhaps a game museum, perhaps something slightly less simple, but a place for playful culture in the broadest sense. So a place where games and play was produced, where it was investigated in various ways, where you could actually play, where you could participate in the games that were made, and also where various parties can meet each other to investigate play. And they commissioned us to do this project. Hubbub is a small networked studio, like Martijn said, for games for social change. We mostly make games that don't happen on screens. They're called pervasive games typically, but you can forget that term. They're not about change. What we try to do is that the games are actual interventions that affect change in some way. And we focus on social phenomena in cities and in neighborhoods, and also more recently within large organizations. And I said we are networked, that is to say, Hubbub has no employees. Each project is done by a team of independent professionals that converge around a shared interest, kind of like the things that happen in films like Ocean's 11, where a gang of crooks comes together, or a heist. And so this way of working we've come to call the heist model. We don't look as glamorous as Frank Sinatra and his friends. Here, it looks a bit more like this. A bit messier, I guess, mostly, but a lot of fun. So, before we actually started making these games for these festivals, I had already done a prior investigation, of which you see some of the the sketches that were the output of the investigation on the screen behind me. I talked to around over 10 festivals in the city to just explore how they think about play, how they think about games, and also what issues they are dealing with in terms of engaging their audience and perhaps also engaging new audiences. Because that was kind of the brief that we were given. So Play was looking to create this place for playful culture that wasn't there yet, but to get there, they thought, we're not going to develop this top-down plan and then perhaps, hire a big building and then do all this stuff. No, instead we're going to work from the bottom up and start just by doing stuff and start to learn by doing. So the intent with Play Pilots was to connect a game audience and the game designers and the game development studios in Utrecht with local cultural festivals, and to kind of see what the value of play for these cultural festivals could be, and to also kind of help by actually working together, help these two worlds come together more. And this is a timeline within which it all happened. It's kind of scary if I look at it now again, because we kicked off properly in June, and we wrapped up in December, and in between, so these 3 games were made. So each game had around 8 weeks from first meeting between the studio and the festival until going live, and then all throughout this period we were also producing and developing this website and coming up with ways in which the website connected to the live game. So it was very much kind of we were very much improvising along the way, but I think it went rather well. So we selected 3 Utrecht studios, and we also selected 3 festivals from all the festivals that we talked to. And we based our choices on the one hand on kind of the affinity or the apparent kind of potential that was there. Of course, we were also looking for a nice timing of each event, because we were looking for kind of this arc throughout this half year that the project would happen in. And our role was to mediate between the game studios and the cultural festivals. And we were also producing this website, of course. And if you're curious about how this whole thing went in terms of the actual making process, you'll be happy to know that each studio was asked to maintain a blog where they would weekly update us on what they'd done and how the collaboration with the studios was going, what they made, etc. And it's still online at blog.playpilots.nl, and it makes for interesting reading. So with that out of the way, let's look at the games. And so I'll describe each game to you in more detail, and I'll zoom in on how they engage the audience, because that's kind of the thing that we're most interested in here today. So let's start with the first one that was made, which is a Whipping Kid. Again, this was made for Stekkerfest, an electronic music festival. And let me show you a short clip that illustrates the game in action. impression of the mayhem on that day. So this is the basic setup. We have 3 spring riders, wipkippen, as we call them in Dutch, and these were constructed from using springs from the actual spring riders that kids would use. But of course, since these were written by adults, each needed 2 springs, and those were just harvested from the Dutch eBay. Basically, they went around the country buying up old spring riders. There's a high-speed camera involved, which I'll get into later. And there's a big screen that functions as a progress indicator. So you were riding your chicken, and by doing that you were moving your chicken on the screen, trying to finish first, of course. And all the while there's this horde of monsters chasing you, and if they would catch up with you, you'd be dead. And so that made sure that races were as short as possible. If you're wondering about I won't get into too many technical details, but I think it's interesting to note that within each chicken there's a Wii remote that basically records the movement of each chicken. So that's how they managed to do that, if you're wondering. And so now, when we get into the engagement bit, perhaps you've noticed in the video that there were these guys that are actually the creators of the game, kind of encouraging the participants to really go for it, holding up the medals that they were racing for. And so this is one way of engaging an audience, right? This is very much in your face, and this whole installation, I think, has a very much a kind of a carnivalesque feel to it. So it's I think, very true to the spirit of the game to actually physically kind of talk to people there and tell them to come up on the stage and ride the chicken, etc. There were medals, and you would think this is kind of a very lame way to motivate people to participate in a thing like this, but on a festival, it works surprisingly well. It functions, amongst other things, as a social kind of signifier to other people there that you participated in this thing, because people were walking around throughout the day, and winners of this kit would keep wearing their medal, and so this was a way for strangers, you know, to come up to each other and say, I won as well, etc. So we were walking around afterwards once we finished this, and we were surprised to see all these people still walking around with their medals, being very proud. And finally, when it comes to the connection to the website, each participant was given a little card with a unique code at the end of his race, and this they could use to go onto playpilots.nl and claim their race time, which was recorded, and to also see a high-speed video taken of that specific race that he or she was in. So this was a way to kind of claim a little bit of a memory of the actual play session. And so all these videos are still on the website, and all the race times, etc. So have a look if you're curious. You saw some of the high-speed footage in the video, like this. So I just want to highlight a few things, the way I look at this project. So this is I would call it a kind of a guided way of engaging people. It's very much, the creators were there on the spot. They were kind of actively engaging people, inviting them to come and play. It also made use of kind of play as spectacle, right? It was just these people going crazy, all these huge chickens. It's absurd, it's interesting to look at. If your friend is on a chicken, you can egg him on, right, etc. So that really works. And finally, when it comes to the record of play that was left afterwards, it's highly personal. So we found of the 3 projects that this game had the highest percentage of people going back online and claiming their bit of data. And my theory is that this is because of the free projects, the bit of data that you claim is very personal. It's a video of yourself looking stupid on a huge chicken. So you know that's worth going back for, apparently. The second project is the Stereoscope. So this was done for the Netherlands Film Festival. It's an annual festival for the Dutch film industry. So all the new Dutch films are shown, and it's also a public festival. The Stereoscope is was commissioned to support the theme of that year's festival, which was a retrospective of 30 years of Dutch film history. And it was a public installation. It was on the festival pavilion, a place like this, basically, throughout the festival for 7 days. I have a short clip. I apologize for the lack of subtitles, but I do think it still illustrates the dynamics of the installation quite well.
Nou, we hebben hem hoor, de stereoscoop. Kun je een beetje uitleggen wat hier de bedoeling van is?
Het idee is om een beeld te geven van 30 jaar Nederlandse films.
Ja.
En toen door screenscènes uit de selectie van de films te pakken en zetten we naast elkaar. En als kijker moet je zo gaan zoeken naar leuke combinaties door mee te gaan scratchen en mixen.
Oh, ik moet zeggen dat dit wel kindertjes. Welke film is dit? Ja, dat wordt niet zo flauw.
Kijk wat combinaties zijn. God was een kind. Ja! Ja! Dat zeg ik! Hoor je me wel? Ik vind het heel erg leuk om met mezelf te spelen.
I'll skip there. The last bit is, actually this was a clip produced by the festival itself, and these are two Dutch actors that were interviewing one of the installation's creator, and at some point he's actually remixing a video clip, a clip from a film that he's playing in at that point, and he tells us that he enjoys playing with himself while scratching. And here's another clip which is used to explain the workings of the installation, which was displayed on the screen of the installation itself. Screen, and on the screen two randomly selected clips from Dutch films are looped, and each of those looping clips is connected to a turntable so you can scratch the video clip. There's these buttons as well, and those are tied to specific points in that clip, so you can kind of repeatedly jump back to specific parts in that scene. And then there's a crossfader, so the audio from both clips is played at the same time, so that you can basically fade from one track to the other. And there's a big button, of course, so that you can get two new scenes. So if you feel like something else, you just hit the button, you get two random new scenes. So this was loaded with hand-picked scenes sampled from over 30 films that span 30 years of Dutch film history, and there were almost 200 clips in there. So there was like a huge amount of scenes with very different styles, of course, and very different moods, from quite violent action sequences to love scenes, and also boring bits where just nothing happened, and all kinds of stuff. And can hardly see it, there's a receipt printer here as well. And so what this system does was, it's looking at the combinations of imagery that you're making. And each of these scenes was tagged with various keywords. And if the system could see that you were making an interesting combination, for instance, you were juxtaposing a love scene with a very violent scene, it would reward you with an achievement that we know from games in the form of a receipt that was printed. Here's one player who's done well, he has a lot. And each receipt has a unique code. Again, you can use that to go onto the website and claim those achievements. So there was stuff like the stylist, the bully, the composer, and those served as kind of suggestions for exploring the videos further. And you could jump into those achievements and see, for instance, which two specific films you'd used to get the stylist achievement, for instance. So a few points on this installation, as opposed to the previous one. There's no person next to this installation telling you what to do or inviting you to play. It's there, and it has to kind of present itself to passers-by and invite them to play by itself. So it needs to be self-evident. And it does this by kind of just having this, when it's not in use, it's still doing things. It's playing this repeated instruction clip, but it's also just cycling through random combinations. So it's a very explorative installation, and ultimately also the record of play that it leaves is more aimed at informing players, because it's telling you a little bit about Dutch film history. If you did not recognize that one clip that you used to get an achievement, you can find out more about it on the website. So I'll quickly go to the last one, which is Bandjesland. And I'll show you a clip first.
4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1.
De geweer naar Bandjesland in de Tivoli. Het beleefde avontuur van de bandjesvrouw.
Attention. Recording starts in 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. Recording has been successful.
Oh, wat doet hij het lekker! Ja, hij doet het! En ja, hij doet dat!
So this is a slightly psychedelic, collaborative music making machine. That's how I would describe it. It makes use of old cassette tapes. Each of those cassette tapes, here's a bit of technical details again, has an RFID in it, an RFID chip, and that is used to trigger various looping sample tracks. On 4 tracks, there's a bass track, there's a rhythm track, there's a melody track, and then there's a sample track, which is a track that plays samples that you've put on the cassette tape yourself. So this is just a very cheerful, messy experience, people just standing around the table and playing around with these tapes all the time. Here's the recording station that you saw. So you put the cassette on the pillar there, stick your head in the dry cap, and then a countdown tells you to sing something or make a noise for a few seconds. It's on the tape, you can take it back to the table and start playing with it. The creators were given a specific space in the music venue where this installation was put, and it was kind of a hidden, tucked away space. Now that can be a disadvantage, but they turned it into an advantage. They called it Bandjesland, take land, literally. And it's a place that you can discover, that you can find, and they hid clues throughout the venue. So there's tapes hidden throughout the venue that you can just take with you, that hint at something going on. And then there's these projections that kind of guide you into this magical place where you can start making music yourself. So they turned this weakness into a strength. And the theater background of the creators, I think, shines through in that sense. When it comes to the data that we captured from this installation, we took a different approach from the previous two. There's no cards with codes or anything. All the music that was made throughout the 2 nights that this installation was at the festival was recorded. We also recorded the sounds in the environment. And we mixed those together, and they're put on SoundCloud in its entirety. All the samples that were recorded are also put online on the same page, and those are timestamped. So if you know you were there around 8 o'clock, you can just listen to the samples and find the one that were yours, and you can favorite them basically. So you can kind of save them for yourself. And you can also download these each. And then I think the most interesting thing here is that you can. If you found that one sample that you recorded, it was on this tape. You might have left that tape, and others might have played with it as well. So you can click this button, and it'll tell you where in the whole session's recording that specific sample was used by players, and you can listen back to that specific bit. So this is a very kind of creative experience. It's social as well. You're playing together. It's not kind of structured in any way, and the record of play is not an individual record, it's a collective record. So to sum up, because I'm already running over time, I think, 3 questions that you can ask yourself when you're doing these kinds of things and thinking about how to engage an audience. 1 is how is the thing approached? So what is it that you're, what is the kind of behavior that you're trying to trigger in people? Or an alternative perspective on the same question, how does it approach? So looking at the thing as an actor itself, how does it actively engage with the people around it? So you can think of it as a person in a way. The second thing is what is the kind of social dynamic that you're going for? Right? Is it very much kind of a carnivalesque thing like in Wippenkip, or very social kind of shared experience like with Bandjesland? And finally, what records of play remain? With all these live games, I think it's very interesting to think about the shadow that it kind of leaves afterward, so that it can live on after the event itself, and that kind of increases the engagement that people can have with an installation like this. Well, and that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kars, for sharing that with us. I think 3 very interesting examples of how you can actually engage an audience in the particular context of a music festival or a film festival, etc. I was wondering, can you tell us something about the relative success of those 3 examples? I mean, what did you learn from them? What worked well and what didn't work so well?
Oh, well, let's see. So I mentioned the fact that the Wippenkip data was the most popular with the players. So that's one thing that went really well. I was also very pleased with the way that the Bandjesland was kind of this world in itself that you could enter. I really liked that. And in terms of the thing that's most interesting about the stereoscope, it's something that you can't really see, but it's the fact that it's actually talking in real time to our website. So that might sound like a very kind of boring technical detail, but it's actually it set us up to do all kinds of interesting things where we could very kind of directly respond online to what people were
Can you give
doing.
an example of that?
Well, ultimately, so in the way it works now is that the moment someone unlocks an achievement on the installation, the website knows that it's there and immediately shows it to us. We could have gone a lot further with that. So if you'd asked me, what is one of the things that could have gone better in this project, is that, as I showed you in the beginning, the creation of the live games and the creation of this website coincided. So we were more or less figuring out what kind of records of play to share, at the same time as the creators were figuring out what the hell this game was going to be. And so I think if I were to do this again, I would. It's a classic answer of I'd like more time. But in this case, when you do these online-offline connections, it really is important because you need to know what kind of play experiences you're kind of communicating on the web.
Are there any questions from the audience by any chance? Feel free, yeah?
I was really impressed by the presentation, thanks.
Thanks.
You used the phrase social change. Can you talk a bit about the social change you're trying to achieve?
That varies from project to project, of course. So what we were doing here was very much about kind of breaking down barriers between audiences. So I think what the clearest example in this project would be the Dutch Film Festival, which is a very specific niche audience in a lot of ways, and is very much about the glamour of film, etc. And new media creators kind of engaging with that stuff and communicating it in a way that is meaningful to an audience that's used to participating in a creative product. So there was a very interesting friction between the festival organization and, in particular, the film creators that were asked to contribute their film. To kind of clear the rights for the film for this installation. That was a real challenge, which took a lot of time, and I think clearly shows that there's a lot of work to be done still in building bridges between these two worlds. Yeah, but the only way to get there, I think, is to start doing it, and that kind of gets the ball rolling.
To a certain extent, you could say that some of these installations, they function also as conversation pieces, right? Especially the example of the whip and kip. You also give people a physical object like the medal, and that allows them even later in the festival to start talking with each other, and the other festivals, of course, do that as well. They do that to these very physical objects.
Yeah.
But were you able to carry that principle of the conversation object also to the online part of your project?
To an extent, but it really depends on infrastructure already being there to share these social objects. So we were connecting to Twitter and those kinds of things, and each of those achievements was linkable and uniquely addressable, etc. So as such, they do function as online conversation pieces. You can point to your specific film clip or to your specific sample, and that can be something that you can talk about. Now, this was back in 2010, and we were, although we were aiming for we were targeting a playful audience, we weren't necessarily targeting a very tech-savvy audience. And so, for instance, the adoption of Twitter and Facebook now is much larger than it was 2 years ago. And so, I think if we were to do something like this again, the online conversation would be much larger, because the overlap of people encountering an installation like this and also being active online has grown tremendously.
There's another question here.
Hi there, thanks for the presentation, very interesting. Just want to ask about the creation of online communities, which seems to be happening after the projects. So, what do the online communities tell us about the future of these projects, and of course, the others like them as well? Like actually, what's happening once you collect the data, and what's happening online? What does it say about the future of these projects?
In terms of their continued existence, for instance, or
it might go. I mean, because obviously this is like an extension, like of the self, if you like. This like playfulness idea.
Yeah.
So, where do you see that actually going? That like extension of the self that then goes online for these communities, for example?
Well, well, obviously, us doing these kinds of things, we feel very strongly about kind of connecting those, the physical realm with the digital realm, and to some extent, we think about it as one thing. There is, of course, there are distinctions, but it's not two separate worlds. For us, it's one world. And so, I think playing and gaming and so on in the physical world, it makes perfect sense that there's also some connections to the digital realm, because parts of our lives are lived there. So these installations should, I think, engage with that part of our life as well. So like you said, the conversation, it might be a physical conversation piece, but then it also needs to be a digital conversation piece. If it's a show-offy kind of look at me experience, then that should translate to something that you can show online digitally as well. It's kind of a philosophical starting point for many of our projects.
Thanks. We have time for one more question, if there is one. If not, thank you very much, Kars Alfrink.
You're welcome.
We would like to welcome the next speaker, Virtueel Platform from the Netherlands.